It's one thing to go learn something because you would like to have the information. Maybe you'll use it for yourself, but possibly you'll use it for others. But it's another thing when you decide to embark upon an educational journey because you want to learn more about yourself. Today, I am going to share the things that astrology helped me to learn about myself. My name is Stacy Patrice. Welcome back to my channel. And please, before we go any further, like, subscribe, and be mindful that you can leave comments about anything that you're hearing in this video that you want to share so that we all can learn and grow together. All right. So, one of the primary things that I've learned about myself through astrology is that I am unique, right? Even if this is something that I might have already known, having it in print before me, seeing the illustration of it, seeing the multifaceted nature of myself outside of myself was really a wonderful experience. Again, I talk a lot about how it provides context for things or language that you may not have. Um, in the beginning, you may talk about your life in a particular way, but it doesn't really translate or read to people. So that communication doesn't really land in the way that it does when you have the wording, the phrasing that comes from the astrology placements that starts to allow you to describe it in a way that you're like, oh, yes, that is definitely what happens. I didn't know that consciously that that was a thing. But now that I see it, yes, it is definitely a thing, but it's also a thing in the way that I can describe it to others and others can relate to it. And maybe we can look at each other's placements and see, like, oh, you have that placement too. That's why you understand what I'm saying. So it definitely allowed me to see myself in whatever multifaceted, multidimensional glory in my multi. It allowed me to see my multi. And I say this because my chart, I have planets all around the wheel, right? So in my chart, I think there are only two houses that don't have planets. All the rest of the houses are littered with planets. Um, and those two houses, there are planets like right on the fringe, on the cusp of those houses as well. So when I saw that, I remember when I first saw that, it looked like a beautiful picture. Like the geometry that people's charts makes it so fascinating to me. And so when I saw my own, I was just like, wow. So like that's my unification. That's where I'm leaning. That's how I'm leaning. And these are the reasons why I do so many things. I learn so many things. I like to share and create and express so many things. And then of course, where the placements are, it's just another level. Another thing that I learned about myself through my astrology journey is that there are things within me that are more, I won't call them passive, I'll say they're more latent. Like they're there, but you really have to like squint your eyes to go, oh, that's what that is. And it allowed me to bring that experience to the forefront. It said, oh, this thing that's really special to me that I feel that you may not see, let me show you what it is. Let me tell you what this is. Let me give you my perspective on how this thing fits into my life so that we can understand each other. And that helped me a lot, not only in talking with my friends, but also with my family and also in relationships. So I learned that I am a great communicator, and I knew that on a certain level already from school, but it helped me to understand that communication was a gift. And so if I am just writing for myself and keeping my own notes and, scribing in my own time, that's one thing for me. But what opens up when I share and express that communication with others so others can feel what it is that I'm putting down and also feel that resonance for themselves, it just opens up into being a much more expansive gift. And I never really saw myself as that. One of my biggest skills that I realized through astrology that I keep way too late, and I am a writer. I am a person who writes and writes and writes and writes. And there's no day of my life that I do not write. I am a writer. And I like to weave stories and illustrations of things from my mind to the page. And that is one of the things that I definitely want to explore more this year in particular, because I did a lot of writing. I have done a lot of writing, but I'm kind of still holding some of my writings. They still feel a little too sacred for me to put them out there. But according to my chart, it's really where a lot of the richness of my life will start to take form. So that's one of the things I've learned is like, stop sleeping on your gifts. The things that you think you're good at, you probably are. If you look at your chart and it's there and it defines it, then definitely share some of those things. And also look at the reasons why you might not feel comfortable sharing. So, like, the kind of areas in your chart that are like, yeah, well, this is going to be a little slower for you. It's a little more Saturnian, or this might be happening, which is a little more mercurial, or this might be happening because you've got this, placement, this Taurus placement, this thing that you need to enhance in a particular way to make it right, and you need to move at it at a steady pace. So then it's like, okay, those things definitely influence how I do it. So just looking at those different degrees or those degrees of difference is something I learned about myself through astrology. Also, I learned about myself through astrology that beauty is so important. Like, so I used to model, do runway modeling and avant-garde fashion, and I loved a lot of that world. Also, as a photographer, which I went to the other side of the camera and started creative directing, and this was like my life. You might even see some of that in my earlier YouTubes. I don't know if it's on my channel or if it's only on other people's channels, but at an earlier part of my life, that was my thing, was like, like curating the scene, curating the spaces, making sure it's beautiful, making sure it's vibrant. It has this certain aesthetic way before anybody was talking about aesthetics on the internet. And it was, from my MySpace days, just forward, right? And I wanted to create these kind of scenes. And so I was like, what is that about? What is that about? Could it just be the Venus and Pisces? Or are there other placements, other things in my chart that indicate? And of course there were. And you might be able to guess some of them. I'm not going to go into all that in this motion, just the top level topic. But it was really important for me to like really hone in on what it is I'm creating with my hands. There's a big thing with my hands. And in sidereal astrology and Vedic astrology, actually, there's a placement for that that talks about people who work really well with their hands. And I happen to see in my chart that some of that is there. And I didn't know that before I moved over to that version of astrology, that this obsession that I have with my hands and creating things with my hands, and how much of my life was really about that when I was a jewelry designer, when I draw and all these different things, when I used to do hair, I used to do natural hair, all of these things that I've done, it really is like this magic with my hands. And so studying astrology helped me to understand what that is, where it shows up in the chart, what that means, and then also like that beauty making, that place making, I definitely saw in my astrology chart and definitely felt connected to the ways in which I want to see and experience more of that in my life. So that means that even if I'm not making things, which there should be no reason I'm not, but even if I'm not doing that at the time, those are the kind of things I'm attracted to and the kind of things that I am drawn towards. It's, the color, the richness, the beauty, the intricacy. It's just the details. And there is a Virgo placement in my chart that is obsessed with the details, right? So, yeah, that is definitely one of the main things I learned about myself. Another thing I learned about myself through astrology is to be okay with the hand that I was dealt. In other words, I remember thinking a long time ago that when I was looking at my tropical chart, I had no earth. So all those years, I was like, I have no earth in my chart. Like, you can't get me to ground. I have zero earth. And I remember thinking that. And so I started my yoga practice because at that time I was under the impression that I had a lack of grounding, I had a lack of earth, or I needed more grounding in my life because I didn't have any earth. This was how literal I was taking this at this time. And I remember going through the process of realizing through my practice, actually, ma'am, you ground quite easily. You do it in different ways. Your grounding is dance. Your grounding is solitude. Your grounding actually is imagining things and then using your hands and putting them into form. So a lot of the things that I didn't think of as grounding, all the music I listen to is heavy, it's rhythmic, and it's heavy with the drums. It's heavy with the low end, right? So I'm doing these things with this kind of element, this kind of sonic, not understanding that that is the grounding in my life or the things that I do. And that's why I need that with the things I do. Mess around, found out in sidereal astrology that I already had Earth in my chart and that I was quite balanced in a way that I was not. I was just gushing water in my tropical chart. But in my sidereal chart, I have all the elements. I have all the elements. And it felt so good when I finally realized, like, yeah, that wasn't the quite accurate picture of yourself. because you being a yogini means that you went through your own process, your own version of what it means to be grounded, and therefore you know when you're not grounded, and you have tools and remedies to go into grounding. And then when I moved into sidereal astrology, again, particularly Vedic astrology, and saw the remedies, these were things that I kind of already had in my life. I just needed to structure them. I needed to honor my sadhana a bit more and put more structure around them on a more regular basis in order to get to the place. And now life is that practice. Now it's me talking to you on a regular basis. It's me doing things that I need to do for myself and having these morning and evening and afternoon rituals that contribute greatly to the ways in which I see myself as seen through my chart. And I think I'll add one more tidbit because this is my favorite part. One thing astrology taught me about myself is how to be in relationship with others. It is primarily astrology that has taught me that because, again, background tropical, there's a lot of emphasis on, the psychological aspects of astrology and me looking deeply into the ways that I am, the ways that other people are, looking at how our charts interface has always been one of my favorite things to do since high school, y'all. Like literally, I have been the matchmaker, matching people, connecting people since high school. This is not a new thing for me. And many, many, many moons ago, that would be one of my favorite ways to connect things is to utilize astrology in that way and just kind of look at who somebody is looking at. So I do that energetically, I do that physically, I do that like on paper, intellectually, what's the conversation, but I also do that looking at the cosmic blueprint. And the cosmic blueprint, whoo, I should have looked at it a lot harder because when I would date somebody, after I looked at their chart and saw the mess that was between us, why did I still go? And one thing I learned through astrology is you go because you're attracted to this thing. It's like it's drawing you in, like your soul wants that lesson that's over there. And even though you have to be careful of when to get in and get out if that's what you're going to do. If you're going to have that experience, just don't rest there. Don't stay there for the rest of your life. That's not a rest of your life experience unless you want it to be the rest of your life. Meaning you want that experience to end things, right? It's not a rest of your life experience. It's time to get moving and get out. And my astrology helped to be like a guide on that path of just seeing who it is that I'm engaging with and why it's so rattling to me. And I have had some relationships, y'all. And of those relationships, I can say it was in the stars the whole time. It was in the stars the whole time, but I might have been in a period where there was something I was looking for, or something I was seeking, and I was like, yes, that's it. And so I'm not going to say delusional. Some people would say, delulu, but I'm not going to say delusional. I'm just going to say very idealistic. But what else would you expect from a Venus and Pisces, right? In both zodiacs. Very idealistic. And I have since learned the ways, honey. I have learned the ways, how to enjoy beauty and connection and harmony, creativity, spirituality, intelligence, doing multiple things, having multiple things happening. Of course, looking at my career through my chart, looking at why I'm always starting new things. All of that is there. So it just is in your ability to read. It's in your ability to understand these interconnections and relationships in your chart. And it is you studying them with such an intensity that you realize who it is that you are has been there all along, waiting for you to claim it. And so the better that you can read what it is that's happening and understand what these archetypes and symbols are indicating and their relationships to each other, the more when you bring in another party, you start to see how that interfaces as well. So I hope that was helpful to you. Share in the comments what your learning trajectory has been with astrology. What did you learn about yourself through astrology? And if you would like, you can share how you learned it, but just keep it top level if you like. Just share what you've learned. And if you are looking to learn more, we are facing to the east starting this week, this upcoming week. I'll leave more about my newest Astrology Self-Study Sidereal Program down here in the caption. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next video. Have a beautifully magnificent, colorful, magnetic day. It is time to honor that light within ourselves. I'll talk with you all soon. Peace.